You really think they'll need backup for a few farmers with rifles? The question cut through the steady roar of rain hammering against the tin roof of the forward operating base, each drop smacking like spent brass against metal. The smell of diesel and wet concrete clung to the air. Inside, 12 Navy SEALs huddled around a folding table scattered with maps, radios, and half-empty mugs of coffee. Their voices were low, forced calm masking the unease that always came before an operation no one wanted to name out loud. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Veteran Story channel so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. At the head of the table, Lieutenant Jack Morrison traced the mission route across the southern jungle of Mindanao, his gloved finger sliding over wet creased paper. Opposite him, Major Andrew Collins leaned back in a metal chair, arms crossed, his tone sharp and dismissive. "It's a mop-up job," he said. "No organized resistance, just ghosts and rumors." The room fell into an uneasy silence. No one wanted to say out loud what they were all thinking. They'd heard that before. In the corner, away from the circle of light, Staff Sergeant Lauren Hayes worked in silence. Her M210 precision sniper rifle lay disassembled on a tan mat, every piece gleaming under a single flickering bulb. Receiver, barrel, bolt. She inspected each one with the ritual precision of someone who understood that survival lived in the smallest details. The steady click of her torque wrench was the only sound that didn't seem afraid to exist in the room. A young SEAL leaned toward another and muttered, "Army's babysitting again." Laughter followed, quick and nervous. Lauren didn't look up. She just tightened her sling, logged her wind corrections with a grease pencil, and kept working. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was respect, the kind that comes unspoken. When Morrison ended the briefing, rain thudded harder against the roof, like the sky itself had grown impatient. Collins's final words hung heavy in the air. "We go at 500, no delays. No backup." Lauren snapped the final latch on her rifle case, the metallic click cutting through the hum of generators. No one said it, but everyone felt it. The storm had already started, and it wasn't the one outside. Hours later, she sat beneath a corrugated awning, gear laid out in perfect symmetry. Her weather sheet fluttered against her thigh as she noted the barometric drop. Variable wind, heavy pressure, rising humidity, bad visibility. Her weapon rested across her knees like a trusted companion. She opened the bolt, checked the glass, wiped away condensation, and paused. For a moment, the memory of Montana drifted back, the dry scent of prairie dust, her father's calm voice behind her shoulder. "Don't bully the trigger, Lauren. Ask it." It had been years since she'd heard that tone, but it still steadied her hands. Afghanistan had taught her to see the shape of danger in mountains. Iraq had taught her how quickly walls could kill. And the explosion that took her spotter, Riley Jensen, had taught her the kind of silence that never left. She carried that silence like armor. On her rifle's trigger guard, a small engraving caught the light. "Never miss twice." It wasn't a boast, it was a promise. Inside the operations tent, Captain Sarah Loon briefed the Overwatch assignments. Her voice was calm, deliberate, steady against the noise of rain and generators. "Overwatch on Grid 7 Alpha, North Ridge, expect minimal hostiles." Lauren studied the contour lines on the map, marking potential choke points and ridges. She raised her head. "And if it's not minimal?" Before Sarah could answer, Major Collins smiled, dry and cutting. "Planning for failure already, Sergeant?" Lauren met his gaze, her voice even. "Planning for everyone to come home." No one laughed this time. The rain filled the silence. When the briefing ended, she folded her map and slipped it into her field book. The rifle case clicked shut beside her boots. She stood face calm, pulse steady as thunder rolled across the horizon. The jungle outside hissed and breathed, a living thing waiting for someone to make the first move. And as she stepped into the night, the rain softened just enough to hear the faint hum of her own heartbeat, the sound of a soldier walking toward a storm she already knew might not let her return. Dawn didn't rise so much as bleed slowly into the jungle, gray light seeping through mist, swallowing shadows one leaf at a time. The storm had thinned to a steady drizzle, enough to make the air heavy, enough to hide movement. Lieutenant Morrison raised his hand, signaling advance. The SEALs shifted forward, boots sinking into mud that smelled of rot and cordite, their breaths forming clouds in the morning chill. Every motion was quiet, every sound deliberate. High above them, Staff Sergeant Lauren Hayes crawled into position on the north ridge, a figure almost swallowed by the earth itself. Her ghillie veil, damp with rain and crushed leaves, blended her into the terrain until she was nothing but shape and patience. She unfolded her tripod, locked the rifle into place, and peered through the scope. The jungle below came alive inside that narrow circle of glass. Drifting fog, thin heat blooms, the rhythmic sway of branches moving against the wind. She checked her readings. Temperature 83 degrees. Humidity high, crosswind at 4-minute priors, a 1/4 mil adjustment. Her fingers moved with precision born of repetition, almost graceful like a pianist tuning a melody only she could hear. Falcon 9 in position, she whispered into the radio. North Ridge. Visibility confirmed. Static hissed. Then Morrison's voice came through. Calm. Clipped. Copy Falcon 9, hold position. Minutes crawled by. Then faint and blurred through the thermal scope. 3 heat signatures flickered in the fog. Then 7. Then 12. Lauren's eyes narrowed, her breath held. These weren't scattered stragglers. The formation was tight, patterned, trained. 45 seconds later, she counted 52. She keyed the mic again. Command, we've got 50+ armed contacts approaching Grid 7 Alpha. Major Collins's voice crackled back, impatient. Negative, Falcon 9. That's thermal interference. Jungle moisture can ghost the image. Maintain observation. Lauren switched modes. White-hot contrast. The silhouettes sharpened. Movements deliberate, bounding in pairs, spacing tight. Not ghosts. Not rain. Soldiers. Sir, she said quietly. Those aren't illusions. They're coordinated. Recommend immediate extraction or air support. Her call was met with silence. Then Collins again, voice colder this time. You're Overwatch, Sergeant, not command. Hold position until confirmation. Below, the SEALs continued moving, unaware that they were walking straight into an ambush. The jungle soundscape shifted. The constant hum of insects dimmed, the air tightening. Lauren's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from recognition. That eerie quiet, that breath before the blast silence. Then it came. A thunderclap of explosion tore through the valley. The ground convulsed. Trees shattered in sprays of bark and mud. Automatic gunfire erupted from both sides. Short, controlled bursts from rifles she didn't recognize. Contact left and right. Morrison's voice barked through the comms, drowned in the chaos of shouts and return fire. Lauren's scope found them instantly, enemy muzzle flashes streaking through rain and smoke. The SEAL formation was collapsing under crossfire. Her rangefinder blinked, 920 meters, too far for most rifles, not for hers. Her hands moved without hesitation. One breath, one calculation. Her thumb flicked the safety to fire. She whispered the wind call to herself. 2 clicks left. Half-mil hold. The first shot cracked through the storm, a sound that split the jungle open. A figure dropped instantly, a clean hit just behind the ear. The second shot ignited an RPG tube mid-lift, fire rolling through the tree line in a shockwave of heat and ash. The third neutralized the gunner, pinning the left flank. Through her headset, Morrison's voice cut in. Who the hell's firing? No one answered. Then realization hit. Falcon 9, keep going. But another voice overrode the channel, Collins furious. Cease fire immediately. That's an order, Sergeant. Lauren exhaled slowly, eyes steady through the scope. If I stop, they die. Her finger squeezed again. Shot after shot, each one a promise fulfilled. The rifle bucked lightly against her shoulder, brass shells tumbling into the mud beside her elbow. Through the lens, she watched chaos turn into rhythm. The team's movement syncing with her fire, one covering the other, inching back toward safety. Rain began to hammer harder now, washing blood and smoke into the soil. The radio crackled with overlapping screams, orders, coordinates. But inside her scope, the world shrank to silence, just breath, trigger, recoil. And then just as suddenly as it began, it ended. The final shot echoed away into the rain. Below, 12 men still moved. Bruised, bleeding, but alive. Lauren kept her eye on the glass, scanning the valley until the last muzzle flash died. She whispered, "Clear," and lowered her rifle. Her gloves were soaked, her heart calm. The battle had lasted 6 minutes. The fallout would last far longer. The command post exploded with noise. Voices layered over static, screens flickering with grainy drone feeds. Maps lay scattered across the table, corners curling from damp air and sweat. Captain Sarah Loon leaned over the monitor, eyes locked on the thermal image. Sharp, precise bursts of gunfire from the ridge. Not chaos control. Each strike surgical, methodical. Those patterns, she murmured, zooming in. That's Falcon 9. Major Collins stormed across the tent, rain dripping from his jacket, rage cutting through his voice. She disobeyed a direct order. I want her pulled off that ridge now. Sarah didn't answer immediately. On the monitor, each bright flare marked another enemy position neutralized. Leadership targets, heavy gunners, flanking elements. Not random suppression. It was strategy, experience. She's not disobeying, Sarah said finally. She's saving them. Collins turned, face red, his voice breaking. At what cost? Protocol exists for a reason. Before he could finish, Sarah flipped the comm switch and spoke into the radio with steady conviction. Falcon 9, this is command. You have full engagement authority. Repeat, full engagement authority on the ridge. For a second, only Rain answered. Then Lauren's calm voice. Copy, command. On the ridge, she shifted her body deeper into the mud. Elbows braced, her veil plastered to her cheek. The jungle below was alive with movement. Shadows darting between broken trees, bursts of gunfire slicing through the haze. Her breath slowed, matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. Through the scope, she saw the seals pinned, stuck between two tree lines, movement limited, visibility near zero. Her kestrel readout flickered. Wind 3 aft cross left, 2 clicks up for drag. Her crosshairs caught a runner darting between cover. 1 exhale, 1 trigger pull. The body dropped mid-stride. She pivoted, scanning for heat blooms through her thermal sight. Each time a signature flared, she fired, never twice at the same spot. Below, Morrison shouted over the radio, "Advance on the corridor." Move between volleys. Lauren's shots became their signal. 2 rounds meant shift right. 3 meant hold. 1 sharp crack meant clear to push. It was communication without words, a language written in recoil and trust. Falcon 9 confirmed status, Sarah's voice came through. Working, Lauren replied softly, still 50 plus. But they're breaking. A shell exploded 20 yards from her position, showering dirt and bark across her rifle. She didn't flinch. Her focus stayed locked on the glass. Her body had learned to separate from panic long ago. Only breath and math remained. Then, above the storm's roar came a new sound, a low mechanical growl that made the trees shudder. The horizon pulsed with orange light. Command, this is Hammer Lead. 2 Apaches inbound, low altitude. A voice cut through the static. Lauren smiled faintly, lowering her cheek to the stock. Took you long enough, she whispered. The sky broke open as the AH-64 Apaches descended through the rain, rotors thrashing the mist into chaos. Hellfire missiles screamed into the tree line, detonating with earth-shaking force. The ridge trembled. 30mm cannons thundered, chewing through what remained of enemy lines. Lauren adjusted her aim, aligning her shots with the helicopter's strafes, her bullets marking hidden positions for their targeting systems. The coordination was seamless, machines and soldier working as one deadly rhythm. Down below, Morrison's voice cut through the noise. Push forward. Clear the left flank. The SEALs surged ahead, dragging the wounded, their boots sliding through rivers of mud. The corridor Lauren had carved through fire widened with each passing second. And then, silence. The jungle smoldered, steam rising from blackened roots and shattered branches. Smoke drifted lazily upward as rain began to fall again, soft and relentless. Through the headset, Morrison's voice came through, rough, exhausted, full of disbelief. Falcon 9, you just saved 12 Americans. Lauren said nothing at first. Her finger rested on the trigger guard, her breath fogging against the scope. Then she replied quietly, "Copy that." She ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and laid the rifle beside her in the mud. The metal was slick and cold against her gloves. Her heartbeat slowed, the world suddenly too still. The battle was over, but the consequences were just beginning. The rain returned before dawn, softer now. No longer a storm, just a steady fall that seemed to wash away what had been done, but not what had been felt. The jungle outside the compound smoldered, smoke curling through the mist like memories refusing to leave. Under the harsh floodlights, trucks rolled back through the gate, tires dragging rivers of red mud across the concrete. The SEALs climbed out one by one, faces streaked with grime and silence. No one spoke. They didn't need to. They were alive, and that was enough for now. Staff Sergeant Lauren Hayes sat beneath the same corrugated awning where she had waited hours before. Her rifle lay disassembled across a canvas mat, mud still clinging to the grooves of the barrel. Her movements were slow, methodical. Wipe, check, oil, reassemble. Each step a ritual of return, a way to remind her hands that they were still hers. She didn't look up when footsteps approached, but she didn't have to. The rhythm of boots told her everything, measured, deliberate, heavier than exhaustion but lighter than grief. Lieutenant Morrison stopped a few feet away. His forearm was wrapped in a blood-soaked bandage, his uniform torn at the collar. "You're the one who wasn't supposed to shoot," he said quietly, half a question, half a confession. Lauren looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time since the ridge. Her face was calm, unreadable. "Guess I missed that memo." He managed a faint, tired smile before extending his hand. The handshake was brief, their palms slick with rain and sweat, but it carried the truth neither could say. Orders had nearly killed them, and disobedience had saved them. The hangar doors opened behind them with a hollow clang. Captain Sarah Loon stepped inside, soaked to the shoulders, her field tablet flickering weakly. "You kept that window open long enough for the Apaches to clean house," she said, kneeling beside Lauren. Lauren shook her head. "The helicopters finished it." Sarah smiled faintly. "You kept them alive until they got there." Before Lauren could respond, a new voice filled the space, angry, clipped, and sharp enough to slice through the quiet. Major Collins strode in, his folder held like a weapon. "Sergeant Hayes," he barked, "you disobeyed a direct command. You endangered the chain of command, and there will be consequences." No one moved. The rain outside seemed to hesitate. Then another figure appeared in the doorway, rain dripping from his uniform cap. Colonel Henry Dalton, commander of the Joint Task Force. His voice was low but carried like thunder. "Major Collins," he said evenly, "you're relieved of command." "Effective immediately." Collins froze. "Sir, with respect—" "Negligence," the colonel interrupted, stepping closer. "Failure to act on confirmed field intelligence. Your inaction nearly cost 12 American lives." Collins's mouth opened, then closed again. The folder slipped slightly in his grip. Dalton turned toward Lauren, his tone softening. "You saved those men, Sergeant. That's not insubordination. That's honor." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Morrison straightened, his boots clicking against the concrete. Sarah followed. One by one, every soldier in the hangar rose, the sound of their movement echoing through the vast metal space. No one saluted. No one needed to. The gesture was silent, absolute. Lauren looked down at her rifle. The barrel gleamed clean again. In the faint reflection on her scope's glass, she saw her own eyes, steady, distant, and human. The storm had passed, but its weight lingered like the damp in the air. Outside, the rain kept falling. And for the first time, she realized that survival wasn't always victory. Sometimes it was just the quiet acknowledgement that you did what needed to be done, and that doing it changed you forever. Weeks later, the jungle existed only in memory. The smell of wet earth had faded, replaced by the sharp scent of red clay and gun oil under the dry heat of Fort Benning, Georgia. Dust lifted with every step across the rifle range as a new line of cadets practiced their marksmanship. Nervous, sweating, trying too hard not to fail. Staff Sergeant Lauren Hayes moved quietly among them, her presence alone enough to steady hands and straighten shoulders. She spoke little, correcting postures, reminding them to breathe through the shot, not against it. "Let the trigger surprise you," she said softly, echoing her father's words from Montana long ago. Most didn't yet understand what that meant. They would, someday. The sun hung low, washing the field in gold. She paused beside one cadet whose stance wavered, his brow furrowed with frustration. "Ma'am," he asked hesitantly, "how do you know when you're right? When you have to go against an order?" Lauren studied him for a long moment, the distant hum of cicadas filling the silence. Her gaze drifted to the tree line beyond the range, where sunlight filtered through branches the same way it had through the shattered canopy of Mindanao. "You never really know," she said finally. "You just trust what you see, and what your conscience won't let you ignore." He nodded, but she could tell he didn't truly grasp it. Not yet. He would one day, maybe in some far-off desert or jungle, when the line between duty and survival blurred into something that no manual could explain. Far away, in North Carolina, Lieutenant Jack Morrison turned his truck into a quiet suburban driveway for the first time in months. His daughter spotted him through the window and ran barefoot across the lawn, her laughter bright and boundless. He lifted her easily, one arm around her, the other trembling from wounds not yet healed. His wife met them halfway, her hands pressed to her face before pulling them both close. For Morrison, the war finally felt distant enough to let go of. In a San Diego hospital garden, Petty Officer Ryan Torres sat beneath a jacaranda tree, his shoulder wrapped in gauze. The wind stirred the pages of a small notebook on his lap. Inside, he had written words he would never send. "Thank you for seeing what we didn't. Thank you for not listening." When he finished, he closed it and exhaled, the peace in his chest quiet and complete. At Joint Command Headquarters, Captain Sarah Loon stood alone in her office, a commendation letter resting unread on her desk. She hadn't framed it. The ink meant less than the choice it represented. In the updated field manual, her name now appeared under a new protocol: Overwatch Integrity. Field intelligence cannot be ignored. What had once been defiance was now doctrine. Back on the range, the cadets packed up for the evening. The light softened to amber, turning the red clay to bronze. Lauren stayed behind, sitting on a wooden bench, her rifle resting across her knees. She wiped the barrel clean, her thumb brushing the faint engraving on the trigger guard. R. Jensen. Never miss twice. The letters caught the last of the day's light. In the distance, laughter from the cadets drifted across the field, blending with the hum of crickets and the low rustle of wind. Lauren closed her eyes for a moment, hearing rain again, hearing her own breath steady beneath chaos, feeling the weight of choices that still echoed in quiet moments like this. Peace, she realized, wasn't the absence of noise or war. It was the stillness inside you when you know that, when it mattered most, you aimed true. The camera of memory panned back, over the empty range, the shimmering air, the sun dipping below the horizon. The scene shifted almost imperceptibly to that faraway ridge where it all began. A single brass casing lay half buried in the mud, glinting under the ghost of sunlight that filtered through what was left of the canopy. They say courage is loud, that it roars with medals and commands and parades. But that isn't always true. Sometimes courage is quiet. It's the still breath before the shot, the steady finger refusing to wait for permission, the understanding that some orders protect authority while others protect life. And that difference, Lauren thought as she rose from the bench, is what defines the kind of soldier you choose to be.